All right.
Oh, we didn't change that.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Beacon Board of Education. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Larry Cohen.
Here.
Betsy Dennis. Excused. Jennifer Edge. Excused. Christine Galvo. Here. Frank Garnott. Excused. Jordan Patchen. Here. Mary Beth Stevens. Here. Bill Zock. Excused. Melissa Thompson. Here. Mr. Hilbert, would you please review the fire exits?
Fire exits are right behind us, to the left and right, and it's probably behind the board.
I'd just like to point out that we're going to do things a little bit different tonight in our process. We will have our workshop, and just after our workshop, the board will go into executive session. When we come out of executive session, we will have a special appointment, and just after that appointment, we will go and have a small reception. So a little difference to our plan, but just so you're aware at this time.
Typically, in school districts across New York State, in August, it's quite a favorite tradition, I'm sure, by local taxpayers. The district gets to set the tax levy. And here to give us everything we want to know about that is Anne-Marie Corderone.
Thank you. For the board, there is the tax warrant, which is part of the agenda tonight, so I'm just going to go over a couple of things just to re-familiarize yourself, since it was only a couple of short months since we talked about the budget. I wanted to also go over some of the things that we talked about during the budget process. The first and most important was the tax cap that started for 12-13 school year. And as you remember, our tax cap percentage that we were allowed to raise the budget was 2.07. That's what we raised our budget. So that was wonderful. But it does give us not as much money available, so we have to really be careful as to what we do and where we go from here in the future. Also, I mentioned during the budget process that we had a loss of all our federal stimulus money. In 11-12, we were able to use the Education Jobs Fund money that we had deferred from the year before. But that's it. All the ARRA, all the stimulus money is all disappeared, which kind of made it much more difficult to do the budget and still live within the cap. So those are things that we talked about during the process. And also the bullet aid of $250,000, which helped us. It was given through Assemblyman Frank Scartatos. Since then, about a month ago, there was an article in the Poughkeepsie Journal about bullet aid giving out to school districts. Ours was listed about a little over $300,000, and included in that is the $250,000 of bullet aid, and we also are getting a grant from Senator Saland for technology, which our Director of Technology has been busy in all of the buildings upgrading a computer lab, so those will hopefully be finished by the time school starts or right after that. The levy increase, as I just mentioned, for the budget remains at 2.07. And the additional increase for the bus proposition, which we were ecstatic about it passing because we could buy some more buses, is a little under 1% in total. This is just a reminder that we were able to keep the levy increase at 2.07 because we were able to use $3.5 million of excess fund balance and reserves. And this is the second year in a row that we have done that. Keeping in mind, actually our auditors are here this week. So we are coming up with a plan for next year once we finalize the reserve budgets. But to keep in mind that's a one-shot deal. We've used it more than one time, so we have to be conscious in the budget process for next year about using that money. Just some highlights. The equalization rates remain at 100%, and they've been 100% for quite some time. You remember in 2006, 2007, we were all three municipalities were brought up to 100%. The taxable assessed values have decreased, and they have been progressively decreasing since 2006, 2007. Those assessments were brought up at a time where the market kind of fell, so they've been progressively decreasing, and I have a slide next that kind of shows you, where the decreases are and how much they are. Our tax sociaries have had an impact on the taxable assessed values, because once a tax sociary goes into court and they decide on it, we always ask the board, we tell the board when we're going to give the payment back, but it also reduces the assessment for the years following. So that's part of the reason for that. And also the STAR exemptions have decreased, which is all used in the calculation of the tax levy and the tax rate per household. This chart just kind of shows where the decreases are. I'll just explain homestead, non-homestead. Homestead is the taxpayers and non-homestead are the businesses. You have to split it up basically 6 ways between the 3 municipalities. You'll notice that in non-homestead, in Fishkill was the only one that had assessments of a positive. So there is more business, there's more assessments in there, but all the other assessments pretty much have decreased, especially in the homestead. So that's what the taxpayers will pay. So you have a decrease in assessments, you have a decrease in STAR, so it kind of makes it a little more challenging. Again, the equalization rates for the 3 municipalities remain at 100%. And the tax rates is just a comparison where we are now. So when you see on the left-hand column, those are the tax rates that you'll see on your tax bill compared to the 11-12. And this chart here basically just shows you the STAR exemptions decreasing. And we do this every year. It's still great that we're getting STAR, and it does help the taxpayers, but progressively the state's idea is to kind of bring them down until eventually they go away from the STAR exemption. But it does affect how we do the tax rates. So just to give the taxpayers an idea how much money it will cost extra for your taxes when you get your bill, we use the same median assessed value of $233,800. That's the one we used in the budget process. We had reduced it a little bit from what we've used in the past. With the new STAR exemption, if you have that assessment house, you will pay an extra $160 per year, or $13.33 per month in the city of Beacon. In the town of Fishkill, the assessment, median assessment is $281,800. With the STAR, would be $202 per year, or $16.83 per month. And town of Wappingers, the median assessed value is $274,800. With the STAR is $159 per year, or $13.25 per month. So those amounts will be, if you fall within the median home value, that's what your increase will be, and then if your assessment is more or less. And that's it. So I'm open to any questions that the board has on any of the assessments. No?
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Approximately how much in dollars does 1% of the tax levy equal?
1% of the tax levy.
So rough dollar amount.
Ballpark,
Yeah.
about $300,000.
So we utilized $3.5 million.
Yes.
So that would equate to about 12%. So actually, we really would have had to increase in order to spend and to have enough money to do everything that we're doing in the district. We would have actually had to go up to almost 14% to cover our expenses
If we didn't have
if we didn't have that balance. So our expenses actually increased so much. The cost of contractual obligations, the cost of running education, our wonderful unfunded mandates, cost so much money to operate that we were able to buy down 12%.
Right. When we talked about the budget originally, we talked about the areas that we have no control over. So
Right.
the big ticket items are the pension and the health insurance and the utilities. So those, and all the districts in New York State are having the same problem because they're dealing with higher percentages in those areas, and they're trying to still live within the cap. So that's what makes it very challenging. And as part of the audit, we determine what the school district's fund balance will be. We keep it at, the mandated 4%, and then we have reserves that we need to do. But like you said, it's money that's there, and if, we can't keep using it, so we have to be just pretty conscious in the future of how we want to do that.
So we actually managed to maintain our programming and keep all of our sports and everything else by utilizing our fund balance.
Well, it was a combination of reserves and fund balance. I don't want everyone to think that
reserves and fund balance.
Right, we still have the minimum required by law of fund balance.
Right. No, because I know that some districts actually had to even close buildings, and I know that there were a lot of cutbacks, a lot of people lost jobs, and I know that in our district that did not happen except through attrition.
Right. Well, I think that the first year of a cap is difficult enough, but I think that the challenging part is the second and the third year of the cap, because it's a cumulative effect. When you're limited to a lean budget, it's very difficult to maintain that over the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Marie,
Yes.
I have a question. I don't, doubt any of the numbers that you're presenting here. But when you kind of move from one slide to a next, it almost seems like maybe we're missing a little bit of information, because it's hard to visualize when you look at the City of Beacon slide. Pretty much the tax rate for those two areas are very similar, 14.75 versus 14.63. Yet the median house value in Beacon is at 233, and it's $160 a year increase. But if my house is worth less, you would think that the increase that I'm going to see versus someone in Fishkill whose house is worth, $40,000 more, yet they're paying the same amount per year increase.
I think
there's got to be a little something missing for an individual to do a calculation to figure out, why that happens.
I think I understand your question, and if I don't, please tell me. But the tax rate, the equalization rate at 100% was meant to have the three municipalities have extremely similar rate per thousand. Where you come into it, I think the confusion is this is the rate per thousand, but if someone's paying a higher assessment, they're going to pay more in taxes. So they're going to start off more. It has to do with what the taxable assessed values are. It's a complicated calculation because it splits between homestead and non-homestead. But the 100% equalization at the time it was done was meant to make the three municipalities within your district have extremely similar tax rates. But if you have a house with a median home value, as you saw on the slide, in Fishkill, you're going to pay more. Your increase is going to be more. And if your assessment is higher, you're going to pay more in taxes. Because you have to multiply the tax. It's a multiplier. You have to multiply the tax rate by the assessment.
They pay more in taxes, but because of the equalization rate, they would have a similar increase because their amount is...
Their increase would be more. If your assessment is more, then you're going to pay more in tax. Then your increase is going to be more.
Okay, but your charts indicate that.
I think the question, Anne Marie, was more between City of Beacon and Town of Wappinger, not Town of Fishkill. Because and this is just a question, maybe you could explain it. 233,800 is the median home value in the City of Beacon, and that shows $160 per year. Now in Wappinger, the assessed value is $274,800, but the increase per year is $159. So
right.
that was the part I think that seemed confusing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you need to know what the basis is of the current tax that they're paying on that house in order to figure out, I think, what you're asking. Because if you don't have the base, then you don't know what the percentage of the increase is. This is just the actual dollar increase.
All right, well, if you did the multiplication, the City of Beacon house, the median house would pay $3,448, if the town of Wappinger's base would be $4,023, a difference of $600. I guess we would
And the
expect to maybe
difference is based
see-
on the value.
But I would expect to see $165, not
Well,
less.
it's difficult for me to explain, it's a 3-page Excel document that we do, so I'll try to be really simple. But Wappingers is such a small portion of the total, and that's what it has to do with. It's a calculation based on taxable assessments across homestead, non-homestead. Wappingers is a small piece of it, so it all calculates out, and then, if you have reductions in assessment, it kind of, shifts it back and forth. So it's a little difficult to explain. I understand your question, but the way Wappingers happens to fall, since it's such a small piece of it in the whole picture of the total assessments, it kind of does that. Basically, the increases that I show, I actually input the median assessed and apply the star and actually do the calculation to try to give you an estimate. I think in the past, before we had the equalization being 100%, my first year or two here, Beacon always seemed to pay more money than everybody else, and it was much harder to explain that because of the way the equalization rate worked. So they were hoping, by making all the equalizations 100%, basically what that does is the tax rate, but it's a little more complicated than that because Wappingers being a small piece and Fishkill, and it all depends on how much their assessments fall within the year. So if you think that there's some other way I can present this next year, I'd be more than happy to do that without really complicating. I don't want to make people walk away and just say, I don't know what she just said, and be totally confused. Obviously, if people have questions on their individual bill, we would be more than happy to do that, but for the most part, I'm just trying to give an overview of, kind of where we are, so. Does anybody else have any questions? No?
Any additional questions?
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your very thorough report. And like Mr. Cohen said, we're in good shape this year, tax-wise, and I know we're hoping to come up with some type of forecast this fall, so we can be very judicious in our planning for the next cycle.
Okay.
Thanks for your great work.
Thanks.
Motion for executive session?
Motion to adjourn to executive session to review the employment history of a particular person, and the board will return as soon as possible.
Second.
Comments? Questions? All in favor? Motion carried. The board will return shortly.